Brought to you by the TGEM Network. The podcast you're about to listen to is just about people coming together and sharing experiences, and is in no way an advice show. Enjoy. Hey everyone, this is Will, the editor and producer of the show. I just wanted to jump in really quick before the show begins to give you all a quick trigger warning. This episode does have conversations on eating disorders, and it has mentions of suicide. If you are not in the headspace to handle either of those topics, I highly recommend coming back to the show later. Thank you for listening, and now, on with the show.
Hello everyone, I'm Amanda Lambert, a registered health and exercise practitioner, and welcome to Real Talk with Strong Minds. Today we have the pleasure of having Hannah on the show, and because we actually met in treatment for our eating disorder, that's what we're going to be talking about today. What it was like for us to be in treatment and our experience with recovery. So welcome, Hannah.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
No, I'm really excited. We've been really wanting to do something like this on the show where we bring someone in that has that lived experience with eating disorders. And I wanted to bring someone on the show so that it wasn't just me really talking about my own recovery. I wanted to get someone that had another perspective. And because we met in treatment, living in the same city, I'm going to pass this on to Hannah. I want her to almost tell you how we met, and so that you can get a better understanding of really how that first interaction went.
Yeah. So I remember I was in treatment. I must have got there a week or two before you. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was kind of words floating around. They're another Sioux girl's coming. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I know her. And it was very everyone was oh, she's from the Sioux. We don't know any information. And I'm like, oh, okay, top secret, hush, hush, get it. And you walked in the door and you were so energetic and happy. And I was like, this girl is a different level. I want to you express so much happiness all the time, but I know you were struggling, and that's what broke my heart about you. Because you literally outwardly just came out hugging people and wishing us all well and hoping for the best. And I was literally this girl is she's
the tears are coming already.
I was I know she's struggling because we're all in the same boat. We're drowning together, but she's smiling and making us all feel we're humans who deserve treatment. And that was intense because I've never seen someone like that. And I just immediately gravitated towards you because I'm there's no way I can't not be friends with this girl.
Oh my, if you could see me, I'm actually tearing up. I think for me, when I was sitting, we were outside on the balcony porch.
Yeah, I remember that.
Where we kind of all hung out. And I remember meeting you, and I was really nervous just because I had no idea what to expect in treatment. And I met, Hannah comes out and she's just so bubbly and happy and kind of the same things, I knew I was struggling because I was in treatment. And here this, beautiful girl comes in and she's just so made me feel really welcomed, and she made me feel not so scared. And when we started talking, it was you're from the Sioux. I just still remember that. It was very you're joking.
Yeah. It was because we were in we're from a small city, and to go to a huge city in a random treatment center and meet someone else, I was what the actual hell? How is this even possible?
So Hannah and I went to London Health Science Center. So we're from Sault Ste. Marie, population 75,000, and London, what's the population there?
3 times the size.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And, the thing is that we didn't, Hannah and I didn't have the option to be able to get better in our hometown. And that's what's still, to this day.
So relevant.
It's just so scary knowing that there's people just like us struggling, battling for their lives, and there's not a lot of support in our hometown. So we had to make difficult decisions. Do we go out of town and get better, leaving, our friends, our family, jobs, school. Yep. I left a business because I knew that if I didn't get the help, I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
And so it was really difficult decisions for Hannah and I. When you were in London, was that your first treatment center?
Well, so as a teenager from around 16 to 18, I was hospitalized in the medical unit. So it wasn't my first experience with treatment because I did treatment there for the 2 years I was in the hospital. But it was my first treatment facility. Like it was the
Okay.
first time I was actually with like people who were experts in eating disorders. But it wasn't my first time like in a treatment environment. But yeah, it was a lot different from being in the hospital.
So I kind of want to like talk a little bit about that because like hearing Hannah's story, just saying that she was as early as 16, you know, battling this disorder and trying to get better. Like, how was that for you? And did you start as young as 16?
No, it started probably when I was 14, but it got really bad when I was 16 and so I went to the hospital. I was having heart issues and they were like, "Yeah, we need to fly you out to sick kids, like you're about to have a heart attack." And it was this whole like big mess and I begged them not to make me go and they said, if they could get a hold of the pediatrician, they'll reconsider their options and like what they can do for me. And I remember the pediatrician literally walked in, he looked at me, he said, "You're dying. We're taking you out of school. We're taking you away from everything. Like you will be in the hospital for at least a year." And that was like the worst moment of my life. Like I remember just sitting there and feeling like my life is over. Like I felt like I had no future. I was like, he took me out of school, right? And when you're 16, school's kind of like your life. Like your friends are there, your future's kind of like wrapped up in that.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
like I don't have a future anymore. And I remember like just scream crying and begging him to let me go home and he just was like he was so cold and he's like, "Nope, like you're here now." And it was absolutely the worst 2 years of my life. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And yeah, it was not a good time.
But, we Hannah and I have very similar stories, but we have very different stories because I remember when I was 14, my mom saw signs of something was wrong with Amanda. And, I kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't really share that with my mom. And I do recall us going to a nutritionist or a dietitian to talk about what was going on with Amanda and her eating habits and her emotional outbursts and things like that.
Yeah.
And I remember they got me to like fill out a food log and I like lied about everything
Oh,
on
yeah.
it. And then our follow-ups were very like, "Oh, this is great. Your paperwork's filled out." And then it was kind of like dismissed. My mom, being Italian background, she just didn't really understand. And to be honest, fast forward 20 years later, she still has a hard time understanding what it's like to be in recovery for an eating disorder. But yeah, I was really young when there was signs, but then it went like basically unnoticed or unrecognized for almost, I'm going to say, at least 10 to 12 years. So when I was about 14, 15, there was signs. My mom kind of, did what she could at the time. She thought she was doing the right things. And then it was just totally like 12 years. I ended up having like addiction issues. I drank a lot. So because I wasn't really understanding what was going on with me, I resulted to alcohol. And so for about 12 years, before I actually was an adult, and I was like, I can't live my life like this. I know very well what is going on with me. Like I'm, not eating, purging, restricting. And it was like, I knew in that moment when I was 26, 27, that I had goals. Like I knew that I couldn't live like this anymore. So my mom wasn't really able to get me the care that I deserved when I was 15. But as an adult, we have the responsibility to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what happened for me. But because I'm an adult, going and getting the help that I needed, it also affected my relationship with my parents because I was like, I'm so mad. How did you not see what was going on? How did you not help me more? Like, there was like so many like of those emotions that I was like, how am I 26, 27 now having to like deal with this? I wish that I was a lot younger when I, went to treatment, but at the same time, I have a feeling that if I would have went to treatment at a younger age, I wouldn't have taken it seriously, or I wouldn't have um, done the work that was required to stay in recovery. I was 29 or 30. I was 30 when I went to treatment. So it was like a big age difference I found. How old were you when you were
Well,
in London?
they put me, I think I was in London right after the hospital, so when I was 18, because they took me out of the pediatric medical unit.
Wow, like
And
you're
then
so young. Eh?
Yeah, and then they immediately just threw me into London. But yeah, I remember like even when I was first like diagnosed with it or people started asking me questions about it, I remember a guidance counselor brought me to her office and she's like, I think something's wrong, whatever. And she said the word eating disorder, and I had never heard that before, except for on like Tumblr. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not real. Like, I remember being like, that's not a thing. And I was like convinced I didn't have one. I was so convinced. I was like, I don't have an eating disorder. I'm just like, it's almost like this delusional thinking where you think like, I just have so much self-control and I'm so powerful and I can control what I do and what I eat. And, you think you have this control and it's like you literally have no control. Like, you have no control over anything. And so like the people who like, I see like therapists tell me all the time still, they're like, oh, it's a control thing. And I'm like, I know that, but I can still recognize now I had zero control in that time.
Oh yeah.
My eating disorder controlled everything, every aspect of everything I did. Like the friends I hung out with, because, they'd go out for food or they'd go to the movies and I'd be like, I can't go. Like, it affects everything.
Oh yeah, like I remember before I went to the doctors in 2017, I just remember like a very like vivid example. My sister came into my bedroom and I was like I had just eaten, and at the time, like anytime I would eat, like I would just have like really intrusive thoughts like you need to get that out. Um it was a very uncomfortable feeling. So I remember I was in my bedroom and I was like cleaning my closet, but like a friggin' like on my hands and knees, like rummaging through things. Yeah. And my sister comes in, she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I have no control of what I'm doing right now." Like, it was almost like my body was so uncomfortable having that amount of food in me, which, to be honest, it wasn't even a lot.
Yeah.
And it was like I needed to like move my body so much so that I didn't feel the feeling of
eating,
of having food in my body.
Yeah. like the just the full feeling, or the like I've eaten, satisfied eating.
And to be honest, I still don't like that feeling.
I don't either.
I'm in recovery. It's been 4 years and I still am mindful of just the amount that I eat. Yeah. Because I know that if I get to a point of feeling too full, there's really loud thoughts that come with that.
Yeah.
And I am good now where I can like shut those loud thoughts down faster.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still there. And it's just something that it's hard even to this day to experience. It's just a very uncomfortable experience, because basically what happens, it's like I eat and then for an hour, depending on how full I am, everything that I do, if I'm sending an email or if I'm trying to be present with my son, there's like a loud voice in the back of my head just saying like, why'd you eat that much? And then like there's just really intrusive thoughts that go with it, like your clothes aren't going to fit.
Don't you feel more bloated now?
I feel, like people are looking at my stomach. Yeah. And so what I always like to educate people is that recovery is great, but there's still work that goes in it. It's not like, oh, I just woke up one day and the eating disorder is gone.
Yeah, no.
It's like, no, I have to work hard every single day to ensure that when I'm eating, I can get through my day and not have to have so many intrusive thoughts. Because unfortunately, our enemy is food and our medicine is food.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of an impossible task. It's like a mountain to climb, and you're like halfway there and you're like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
But you got to keep going.
Yeah. And like, it's just, it's challenging, but what's great is, the experience that I had in treatment. It was my very first time going. And to be honest, like having conversations with Hannah, even in treatment and out of treatment, I told myself, you're not going back. Like, you do whatever you need to do while you're in treatment, because you're going home and you're not coming back to this. And it wasn't that it was painful to be in treatment. It was just that you have to put your like life on hold.
Yeah, it's a lot for 3-4 months. Like, that's a long time to just be focusing on you. Like, and when you literally hate yourself, to spend like 3 or 4 months just sitting there like being like stuck with yourself, it's like, wow, I wish I wasn't doing this actually.
Well, I'm glad that you said that about, hating yourself, because I kind of want to talk a little bit about like, what do you think the root cause of your eating disorder is?
I think honestly, I remember the day it started. Like, I can pinpoint the minute the thoughts started turning negative, and that makes me so sick. And like, it was when I was on a walk with my mom and my cousin, and I don't blame either of them because they didn't know really.
Yeah.
And I was like maybe 13, and I was like, oh, I want to lose some weight. And my cousin was like, well, switch to Diet Coke instead of regular Coke. And I remember something in my head just immediately, was like a light switch. And I was like, I could do so much. Like, I was like, I could cut out this, I could cut out that, I could do this, I could do that. Like, Diet Coke became my best friend, even though it's not that yummy anymore to me. I don't know. But like, I remember like, this is the best thing ever, because it's like, it's satiating for a little while. Like, it's carbonated, so you feel full, but you're not full. And I was like, there's so many things that are like, that I could do. And I remember slowly changing like everything. And it got to a point where it was ridiculous. And I remember like someone looked at me and they're like, it was so rude. It was in high school, and someone looked at me, they're like, you look like a Holocaust survivor. And I was like, you're just jealous. Like, I remember thinking that, and I was like, and now I look back, I'm like, yeah, it's literally delusional thinking, where you're like, oh, I looked so good, and you look back, you're like, oh, my face, okay, that's how I looked at my happiest, because you think you're so happy in that time. Like, even I look back sometimes, I'm like, oh, I was so happy then, I had so much control, and then I think about it, I'm like, I almost died. Like, I almost had a heart attack, and like, I don't think I looked peak performance at that time, if I'm being honest. Like,
you're so funny.
Like, I look back, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't my hottest, I'll say that. Like, literally, like, people are calling me a Holocaust survivor. I'm like, that's not great. Thank you, though.
It's interesting, right? Like, when you think that you're like looking like the bee's knees, you're really not. But yeah, I think for me, it started when I was younger, but what happened for me was I overate. So when I was young, there was some trauma that had happened when I was younger. And I believe that, the root cause of addiction and eating disorder can be trauma. And so I had some trauma that I had experienced, and I kind of turned to food. It was a comfort. And so it was comforting. Okay, this is going on, I'm going to eat. And then that kind of went into my teens. I was about 13, 14, starting high school. Well, then, I was getting discouraged because boys weren't looking at me. And then I recall, it's really interesting that you say about the Diet Coke, because again, I don't point any fingers, but I had a really good friend at the time, and we wanted to lose some weight. And so she suggested the no carb diet. And at the time I drank coffee and I did smoke cigarettes. So again, that suppressed my appetite. And it was a moment in grade 10 where she was like, you don't look well. And I just kind of like did the whole like, you're so jealous of me.
Like people would literally be like, you look like you're dying. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And it was like, what was I thinking?
And so I remember that. And then because again, the confusion, I wasn't really understanding what was going on personally. I just drank a lot, but then I didn't really think that there was a problem because I was that typical high school, mid-popular gal that like, went to parties, and that was just a thing. My parents didn't really think anything of it either because they thought like, yeah, she's just a typical teenager going out every weekend. But the overeating led to addiction with alcohol. And then, I lived a really like unhealthy lifestyle for my whole entire 20s. And then that's when I really noticed there was massive shifts going on with my own mental health. I decided that, well, not actually, I didn't decide this. Someone approached me and was like, you should do a show. You should do a bodybuilding show, bikini class. And I'm thinking, that just started thinking, oh my God, someone's approaching me. Like, I look good. Like, let's do this. I decided to go through competing with the show. And at the time I was like, it's really weird. I thought that I had, for the first time in my life, full control over this, whatever it was. Eating disorder. I didn't really identify it as an eating disorder at the time. I just was like,
I have control.
Yeah. Like I didn't really know what was really going on. Through that experience of training for the show, I just really thought I had full control. I was eating the most I ever ate. So I thought that because of me eating so much that there was no problem.
Yeah.
Oh, but there's a lot of problems. And I think that could be another show about the detrimental effects of training for a bodybuilding show.
Probably.
Like it's just, there's so many things that I can go into, but it was through that experience where I was having a hard time with my body image. I was show ready, stage ready. And then after you compete, you gain some weight. It's normal. That's what happens. But with someone in my situation that was basically not identifying that she had an eating disorder, it was really bad.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I ended up kind of admitting something about my eating in counseling. And that's when she said eating disorder. And I was like,
liar.
Really?
Yeah.
And then it was really, from there, it was in the back of my head, like eating disorder. What? Like,
yeah.
What? And that's when massive shifts started happening for me, is when I was like, yeah, something's wrong.
I remember when people would bring up eating disorder to me and I'd literally think they were lying. Like, I'd literally be like, you're a liar. Like, why are you telling me this? And because I thought I was so healthy. Like, I obviously wasn't. I mean, Diet Coke and cigarettes all day is not peak diet. So I was like, oh, like, I'm so healthy. People are just jealous. And it's like, I don't think anyone's jealous of you, girl. Like, you don't look well. You feel unwell. You're passing out at school. They called the ambulance on me maybe 6 times in high school for the limited time I was there, because I was always in the hospital. And so for the limited time I was in high school, I was always in the hospital. Like, I'd spend half a day at school. They'd have to call an ambulance.
Oh, wow.
So I'd fall. I wouldn't have strength to stand up. Like, that's when I started getting heart palpitations and all that stuff. But like, it was just like, you think you have this like control over yourself, and it's like you are lacking control. That's the issue. And it's just like, it's so confusing, and it's like you become delusional. Like, you literally become delusional. And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean that in a literal, like, you become delusional. Like, you start thinking things you wouldn't normally think. Your brain starts doing weird things, and you're like, this is the diet for me. And it's like, even if it's killing you, people, like, doctors would tell you, like, you're dying, and you're like, well, no, I'm not. Like, I'd literally be like, what do you know? I'm 16, you're only 50 and have like 10,000 years of school under your belt. What do you know? And like, I remember arguing with doctors and being like, I'm fine. Like, And I think we were different because of the age.
Yep.
Like, you recognized it and you're like, okay, I need help. And like, I recognized it and I was like, F everyone. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die
And
in
that's
this hole.
why, like, when I had mentioned that if I was as young as
Yeah.
you, in a sense, like, not that you were getting forced to get the help, but if I was on, if I put myself in your shoes, I would almost feel like people were making me get healthy.
Oh yeah, that's what I felt.
And I just know that even though I have those thoughts of, oh, I wish that I would have gotten the help that I needed and deserved when I was younger, I don't think I would have been successful.
No, and honestly, like, treatment, it did point me in the right direction, but it's not what made me better. Because I was too stubborn. I remember one of the counselors at the center, she sat me down and she's like, I don't say this often about patients and whatever. And she's like, but I believe you have a chronic eating disorder. And I was like, okay, like, what do you want me to do with that information? And
like, I'm here, like, getting the help, you educate me.
I'm like, okay, anyways. And she's like, yeah, like, she's like, I don't say this about people, but I think you have a chronic eating disorder. And I was like, explain, like, what is that? And she's like, it's basically where you're like not willing to do treatment. And it broke my heart because I was trying so hard. And I was like, I have been hospitalized my entire teenage years. I have suffered from this my whole life, pretty much. Like, from what I can remember, I've always had eating issues, but it got bad at like 13, 14. So I was so angry. I was like, how dare you tell me I'm not trying? Like, you asshole. I remember I hated her after that. I was like, oh, I never want to see her again. Because, like, she literally just told me, like, you'll never recover. And I was like,
that's unfortunate.
Thanks. Like you're rude. Like, you're rude. That's what you are. I was so angry.
How dare you?
Yeah, because I felt like I was trying and I was doing the work, and I had been doing the work for 5+ years. I wasted my entire teenage life in hospitals with feeding tubes and like getting treatment and being told I'm gonna die every day, and then like she's over here like, yeah, you're not gonna recover.
That's awful.
Yeah. And so I remember feeling just very like distraught after that appointment. Like, I was just like, anyways, like, okay. But yeah.
So so after you left treatment, how did you deal with the eating disorder? Like, what kind of got you to a point where you can kind of say, I'm in recovery?
Honestly, the last 3 years. And I chalk it up to good support. So after I left treatment, I think I got worse, if I'm being honest. Like, I had all the skills, but I was so against what she had said to me that instead of being like, I thought I'd be like, oh, I want to get better to prove to her that she's wrong. But instead it put me in such a dark spot that I just got worse. And then I was with a psychologist and I couldn't stand him. He literally said I stare at him like a Sphinx cat because I don't talk to him. I was like, yeah, I'm never seeing you again. And it was so weird. Like, not the vibe. So I stopped seeing him. I was in DBT. They put me in DBT, but I was refusing it. I was like, I'm never getting better. Like, I hate everyone. Like, everyone could go to hell. And I met a psychiatrist through that. And I started seeing her weekly 3 years ago. And I still to this day see her weekly. And she is literally like when I say she pulled me so hard out of that dark spot, like, she literally yanked me out of that dark spot because she just cared so much about my well-being. And like, I've never had a treatment person really be like, I want you to get better. Like, I genuinely want you to be better. And I felt like everyone in the treatment facilities were against me. And I was like, everyone hates me. Like, everyone's against me. And then I met her and she was like, no, like, I'm always going to meet you where you're at. I'm always going to support you. And she's like, that's it. Mm-hmm. And like, ever since then, I just felt like comfortable and safe. And when you feel comfortable and safe, like, it's easier to feel safe inside yourself.
Yep.
If your exterior feels safe, your interior can feel safe as well. And it was just like, you need to find support, you know? That's a big thing, and it's hard to find support in a small city. Like,
oh, don't get me started. So
Yeah.
I'm going to share a little bit about my like perspective.
Yeah.
So, you know, as much as Hannah was saying that, you know, she didn't have like the best experience in treatment. In fact, you know, well, what you just heard, that she really didn't feel like she got the support that she needed. For me, so a year leading up to treatment, I remember going to the doctors in 2017, basically telling them like, this is what I have and I need to get the support here, or else like I don't know what else is gonna like happen. I was actually fearful like of my life, because at that time the eating disorder had gotten so bad that my parents had found me passed out at home. They wanted to bring me to the hospital, but because I was affiliated with their hospital, I really didn't, and on the mental health unit, I didn't really want to be a patient. Like it was something where I was like, no, like I actually have to be there tomorrow morning. And so I remember telling my parents like, don't worry, I'm gonna get the help that I need. It was that moment where they had found me passed out in the hallway that I was like, no, like I'm going to deal with this. I don't want this to happen for my parents again. And I made the appointment with the doctor, told her what I had, even though I knew what was going on. Before I could even decide or think to go to treatment, I had to get a referral to a psychiatrist. So that was a 7-month wait list.
referrals are
Yeah.
my worst enemy.
Referrals, honestly, like, okay.
If you're a Canadian in a small town, you know, referrals are your worst enemy.
And so I literally was like, why do I have to wait this long when I know what I have? So, you know, here I was this was like the beginning of having to really listen. And so I waited, and I, you know, in those several months of me waiting just to be told what I already knew, it was a really dark place.
Yeah.
And then I met with the psychiatrist who already told me what I needed, who then sent another referral to the eating disorder specialist. And because I don't know why he couldn't just send the referral to treatment. So her name was Anna. Yeah. And she's really sweet. And the referral went to her, and it was about like another 6-month wait list. It was a really frustrating time when the hospital had called telling me, yeah, we have a psychiatrist and you can come to the appointment, just to be told I have to wait another 6 months.
Yeah.
So I waited again. You know, I believe my higher power truly like helped me, because I was like not in a good place. Like I was restricting for days. I had no calorie intake. I was passing out. And then I remember my first therapy session with Anna. She actually was double booked. And so the person that was waiting to see her, she had overheard me saying that it was my first time. And I actually knew her, and she had come up to me and she's like, hey, Amanda, I actually have an appointment with Anna like right now, but I'm going to let you have it. And I literally like, I have like goosebumps. I remember that day, because had they said, oh, actually,
Wait another 2 months or something.
We messed up, you have to come back, I probably would have, but who knows? Like, who knows what would have happened in that moment had, you know, someone told me that. So I remember my very first session with Anna, and right in the very beginning of, you know, those initial minutes, I just straight up said, I need to go to treatment.
Yeah.
And she was able to send that referral, another referral. And it was about another, I think it was 8 months.
Yeah, it was the longest referral, because I remember it took a while.
It was 8 months until I was able to get to treatment. So it was like, I'm going to say it was well over a year from the minute I made the doctor's appointment, like I need help, to when I actually got help. It was probably, I'm going to say maybe 15 months.
Yeah. I remember, because we both saw Anna. I started seeing her, I think when I was 16. When I got hospitalized, I think they just bumped me up to the top of the list, and they're like, yeah, you're going to be seeing her like now. And she just like, no, it was a couple weeks before because it was getting bad and they recognized that. So they're like, we'll let you see this therapist. And I remember I walked into her office and I hated her. I did not even want to look at her. I remember she was like getting me to sign papers. I'm like, I'm not signing anything. Like I was just being a total dickhead. And poor Anna, I love her to bits. I still talk to her sometimes. And like,
I yelled at her in a session. I was like, why are you looking at the clock? And she's like, I'm just checking the time.
Oh, I used to scream we used to get in screaming fights. Like Anna is such a calm person. And she used to tell me, she's like, you push me to my limit sometimes, kid. Like, she was just like I felt bad for her. But she started coming in to see me, or I went in to see her. And then when I got hospitalized, like a couple weeks later, I remember I was like up all night sobbing. And I was still awake in the morning when she came to see me. And she just like grabbed my glasses and she put them on my face. And she's like, there you go. She was so cute. And I was like, oh, thanks.
You know, she's so sweet that when I had an amazing team in London. We put together a discharge plan.
Yeah.
It was almost like a plan that could not fail.
Yeah.
Like it was a plan that was going to set someone up for success to be able to be discharged, coming back into their hometown and, you know, dealing with this new recovery life. And Anna was a big part of that in DBT. And I remember coming back to my hometown to be told that I was on a wait list for DBT. And it was my 4th session with Anna. And I remember going into the therapy session and just something felt off. And I sat down and, you know, therapists aren't supposed to show so much emotion, but she was showing some emotion.
She's a good gal.
And she was like sad. And I just was like, oh my God, what's about to like be said? And she had to tell me that she could no longer see her adult patients and that she was only able to work with her youth patients. And in that moment, I was so vulnerable that I was maybe not even a month home from treatment, very vulnerable. I didn't go back to my job. I had to really reevaluate my friends. And this was a woman that I was like really relying on because, you know, like,
when you leave treatment, you have the skills, but you don't have the support all the time.
Exactly.
You need that support.
And she had to tell me, and it was just a really challenging moment where she tried super hard to really align me with a therapist before she was no longer able to take me on her caseload. And I waited about a month and a half to see a new therapist. Yeah. And at that point, I had found out that Anna had a private practice and I had to make a decision. I had to put basically like fate into like this new therapist's hands who had no background education on eating disorders. Or do I spend the money and see Anna? And it was just a really difficult situation for me to make that decision where I was like, you know what, I have to go with the free healthcare right now.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Yeah. And so I remember not wanting to have to decide, but they both were like, you unfortunately have to make a decision because having too many people kind of,
it dilutes it.
Yeah, exactly. So I went with Jamie, and you know what? As much as I know that Anna,
male therapist,
I love him, and you know what? Like Anna's the best, but I am glad that I went with Jamie just because, like what Hannah said, I've seen Jamie now for 3 years. I go to weekly therapy. He's no longer with the hospital. He does private practice. So, I mean, I eventually ended up having to pay. So it was like, man, maybe
I'm getting fucked over.
maybe I should have went with Anna. I'll tell that to Jamie next week when I see him. Like, yeah, maybe, I would have been better off with Anna. But, like I believe having that important support system really goes a long way with someone in recovery. And it doesn't even have to be recovery on eating disorders, like any type of recovery. If you have a solid support team, and that can include anything that you want, it's so important. Like I just can't even stress the importance of even, like I personally think everyone should have a therapist, whether it's through free healthcare or paid through private practice. But even just talking to someone, like even once a month, like I will be honest, I didn't have therapy this week because my own therapist is in training, and I can even feel it. I can even
the tension.
I can feel my system just like, we need to talk.
We need to get this out.
We need to really talk about this.
Yeah.
And so I'm really on the same side with what Hannah said, really building yourself up and having that important like support system goes a long way. And what I've also learned is that if you have like even family members or friends that don't understand recovery, you don't have to be around them. Like you can make decisions, and, even if it is in regards to your own family, you don't have to be around those people. Like you can choose
boundaries with yourself and your recovery.
Well, yeah, that's boundary. Like I never knew how to set boundaries until I went to treatment. And the first boundary I had to set was with my father. And it was like really, really hard. It was really hard.
Setting boundaries with family almost feels unnatural. And it's like, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this, when it's like, you should be actually, you really should be.
Oh my God, that's the best.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Like all the times that you did like go to treatment or, like get the help that you needed, was there a long wait list for you?
No.
Okay.
So I saw Anna from 16 to 19. I saw her for a long time. And because she was I think it was because she was like a designated eating disorder therapist, they kind of listened to her a little more, if that makes sense. So I had a therapist before Anna, but she wasn't really great, let's say. She wasn't the best, okay? And she was like, but she recognized that this was getting out of hand. And she's like, okay, I'm going to refer you to the hospital. And I thought it's going to be like a year. So I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm golden. I don't have to see this for a year. So I thought I was in the clear. And then I got a call like the next week. And I was like, oh, okay. So
this is happening.
Yeah. And so I remember it was from Natalie. You remember her? She was the nurse practitioner for the eating disorder.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and Natalie's like, hey, you're going to come in and you're going to see me. Because they kind of had to trick me into treatment. They couldn't straight up tell me I was doing treatment or I wouldn't go.
Okay.
So Natalie's like, come in and I'm going to check your heart rate. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm like, okay. So I go in and I'm like, she's getting me to sign papers. I'm not reading them because I'm 16. I don't care. I still don't care, honestly. I don't know why I'm lying and saying I was 16. I still wouldn't read them. And she's like, okay, and now we're going to go down the hall and we're going to meet my friend Anna. And I was like, who's Anna? And they're like, yeah, she's like, she's going to help you and talk to you and blah, blah, blah. And I walked in, I'm like looking around her office. I'm like, this is a therapist's office. It's like,
yeah,
these
they tricked me.
They got me. I was like, damn it. But I remember I sat down and I was miserable and I was shaking because I was always freezing cold.
Yeah.
And I was miserable. I was shaking. I was like, I'm not signing anything. And I was like, just right here, you know how Hannah talks. So she's like getting me to sign papers and she grabs a blanket and she wraps it around me and she's like, you look cold. And I was like, huh, maybe she's not too bad. I was like, maybe she's not the worst thing. And yeah, it just, like, everything moved really quickly, and I think because Anna was always advocating for me, and, like, she got me into treatment pretty quickly. Like, when she recognized it was kind of out of her hands, she got me into treatment, like, well, first she got me into, like, a weird treatment center in Sudbury where they just, like, talk to you for an entire day.
Oh,
It's like a day of therapy.
Oh, okay.
Like, you meet with a nutritionist or a dietitian, one of them. You meet with a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a therapist, I believe it was.
Okay.
And you talk to them all day. You literally get like a lunch break. And I was like, where am I? Where did Anna send me? And like, she's like, oh, it's my friend. Like, you'll talk to them. And I'm like, your friend? Why are you sending me? What the hell? And so anyways, I go to Sudbury, come back, and they diagnosed me with something that I don't even have. So I was like, why did I go there?
One of those stories.
Yeah, I was like, why did I go there? Like, they diagnosed me with something that, like, I clearly did not have. Mm-hmm. And so even I was, like, 16. I was, like, Googling it. I was like, it says right there, I don't have this. Like, you can read it. I don't have any of these symptoms. They diagnosed me with, like, first of all, I think they said I had bulimia when I was anorexic. And so I was like, did they mess this up?
They literally, okay.
Yeah. I was like, what'd they mess up here? And so I was so confused because I was like, I don't do that. And then they said I had like bipolar 1 or something. And I was like, I don't have that either. And like, because the only emotional outburst I was having was around Anna. And that's when later I was diagnosed with BPD.
Mm-hmm.
Long story. And
we'll bring you back.
Yeah, long story, full circle moment. But like, it was just like so annoying. And then like Anna's like, hey, they messed up. Like, you're going to treatment. And she basically like, she was like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. Like, you're not getting better. If anything, you're getting worse. And she's like, you're going to treatment. And I remember like having that conversation with her. I was like, I'm not going. Like, you can't make me go. And she just like stared at me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll go. I was kind of scared of her. I was like, okay, I'll go. Damn. And so like I did agree to go after everything. But it was kind of like a bribe type of thing. Like, if you go, I'll keep seeing you when you get back. And I was like, okay. And then, like, I did not want to be there. And it was a whole mess. It was a whole situation. I hated it. I was at London twice. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
So the first time I was there, I left after attempting suicide while there.
Okay.
And because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in treatment. I thought there was no cure for me. I thought I was one of the ones that just weren't going to make it out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, why am I even here? Like, I'm wasting time, like, whatever. But yeah, like, it was a show and a half.
You know what? When I was making the steps to go to treatment, I had to often go to the hospital to get like my blood pressure done, like blood work. And I remember they were like, you're depressed. You need to be on medication. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, well, I'm about to go to treatment. Why don't I go to treatment and see what happens, since I'm going to be going for the eating disorder.
Yeah.
And then we can like maybe reevaluate this depression.
Go from there.
And they were very like, no, we think that you should go on it before. First of all, we are going to be having a topic about pharmaceutical companies and incentives that physicians and psychiatrists get.
Yeah.
That's a whole different topic, but I was very much like advocating for myself. And I was like, no, I do not want to be on medication right now. I want to be able to see what this treatment is going to bring like to the table for me. And then we can reevaluate. Like if I'm still massively like depressed or having these episodes, then we could see what's going on. And you know what? I'm really happy that I decided to really advocate for myself in regards to that because, I went to treatment, listened, did what I needed to do, came back, and, yes, there was not a lot of supportive factors put in place for me, but I made it happen. And the depression was really like, it just kind of like
Disintegrated?
I was going to say dissipated.
Dissipated? I think it's like the same thing.
But it like, I still have some moments where I feel like that, that black cloud, that depressive like moments. But it's not as heavy and it's not as dark and it's not always there. Whereas before it was because I wasn't addressing what was really going on, the eating disorder. Yeah. Right. And so I mean, should I be on an antidepressant? Who knows? I don't know. But I do believe I just believe that I was meant to say no at that moment to really understand the full experience of treatment. Yeah. And to like learn those tools that we need to be able to sustain recovery.
Yeah, because medication is a great like tool, but it's not the overall, like you can't just rely on it. You have to rely on your skills, your support system, more so than I feel the medication.
Yeah, and like that's like a whole like other like topic in itself, but yeah, like I'm definitely not against medication. Yeah. I just really believe that a lot of times when people are addressing something that they need to address, they're often told, why don't you go on this? And why don't you go on that? And why don't you go on this? And you'll feel better. Well, maybe short term, but like, let's address the real root of
the
like
elephant in the room. Yeah.
So all in all, like, how has recovery been for you?
Um, if I could put it into one word, I'd say freeing. Very freeing. Because when you're kind of trapped in it, you're trapped in it. Like you feel like you have no way out, like you're just this is your life. And I always felt like I was gonna live and die by my eating disorder. And I remember like making the conscious decision to like step into recovery was like so weird for me because I had never, if like I was stubborn. I was like, I'm not doing treatment. I'm not leaving Anna. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Like you can't make me. I'm not signing that piece of paper. You can't make me do this. Like literally, they'd ask me to do the simplest thing. I'm like, do it yourself. Like I was so mean, and I think I was just like hurting so bad that I just wanted someone to like genuinely care and genuinely want me to get better because like I didn't love myself enough to like get better for myself.
You're right.
And I know like people are like, you have to recover for you and for yourself. And I understand that. But when you're starting out, it's kind of hard when you don't love yourself enough to be like, I'm going to completely change my life for myself. It's like, why would I do that? Like, I don't even care if I live or die. So why would I change my entire lifestyle? And so like when I started recovering, it was mostly with the psychiatrist. And I started recovering with her because I genuinely felt like she gave a shit.
Yeah.
And I still do. Like she like I don't think she realizes how much she has done for me because she's not like she's not a therapist, right? She's not an expert in eating disorders. She's a psychiatrist. They give you medication. But it just so happened that we got along well enough that we could just talk for an hour. And for some reason, like her just genuinely caring about what I'm doing and about how I'm doing, and like she doesn't really know what's going on, but she's trying her best.
Yeah.
That made me feel like someone cares about me. And if I'm not going to recover for myself in the moment, maybe I'll do it for her. And then like eventually it turned into recovering for myself. So it was really like weird. I felt like, why am I doing this for her? Like, she pisses me off sometimes. And then I'm like, and then like, I was like, I'm doing this for her, but it's gonna evolve into me. And then like eventually it did. And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like I'm smart enough to figure that out for myself.
That's awesome.
But yeah, like I think sometimes you can't start with yourself. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have to start recovering for other people because it's like, if you hate yourself, why would you want to recover for yourself?
Yep.
You kind of have to grow that love for yourself first.
Oh, yeah. Like, I know all about not loving yourself. It's just like, I remember days where I just like did not care if I woke up or not. I like really didn't care if I like got through the day, to be honest. And I just had really bad thoughts about myself. Like I just had no self-love. And so I think for me, it was my company at first, because when I went to treatment, I was going in my second year of owning Strong Minds, and it certainly wasn't what it is today, but I just knew that I found my calling, or I found what I wanted to do with my life. And before those moments, I like didn't have a vision for my future. And so I think I really did it for my company. And then that kind of evolved to like, yay, I want to do it for myself. And then it really like led to like me wanting to do it for my son, or my child at the time. I didn't know what I was having, because with my recovery, they say don't meet anyone or date until you've made it a year in recovery, like the 1 year rule. And I was almost there. I almost had reached the 1 year mark, but I had met someone and we had dated for about 7 months, and then I got pregnant. And it was in those moments, before I actually found out I was pregnant, like, I don't share this too much, but we're on the podcast, and I was like, I didn't relapse, but I was certainly like going backwards with my recovery. And, it was a very scary moment, because I was like almost a year in recovery, and I just had massive thoughts about, just, going back to my old ways. and I was drinking at the time, and I, was drinking with my partner, and I just knew that I was kind of like not going on the right path that I was supposed to. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I stopped drinking, and that's when things kind of got a little better in a way. It was when I got pregnant and I stopped drinking, and I was full blown into like, recovery, meaning like I was going to weekly therapy sessions. I was sober. I could have, but I wasn't going to because I was pregnant. And I just was really learning a lot about my trauma, my internal system. And it was being pregnant where I was like, okay, I have a child now that, I need to also do this for.
Mhm.
I need to like be in recovery for myself, but I really need to like be in recovery for my son. If I'm not healthy, how am I going to raise a healthy child?
Yeah.
Because I certainly don't want my child to be spending almost 10 grand a year in therapy. And yeah, therapy's not cheap.
Oh,
But
God.
it's worth it. And so I really wanted to break cycles. And so, yes, every day I embrace that I'm in recovery for myself. But, when I look at my little human, I'm like, okay, I'm also doing this for you.
Yeah.
And to be honest too, like even with my own recovery, like I am now having a way better relationship with alcohol because I'm addressing what needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
So me and alcohol, we have a healthy relationship now. I can stop. I can go a day without alcohol. I don't need it. And so yeah, I always like to share that because, I mentioned about concurrent disorders and being sober. And I did stay sober for a full year before going to treatment because that was suggested. And so it was just, that's a big part of my story too, was, the addiction side of things. So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. I do believe that Hannah and I have beat the odds. We live in a very small city that we do not have support for this type of illness. And I do recall like having that conversation with Anna before, we had to, separate from therapy. But she did say like, Amanda, you're going to like change people's lives. Like you're going to help people with this because I would never want anyone to experience like what I had to experience coming back from treatment. Like treatment was great, but coming home was a really horrible experience. Like I thought coming home I would have all of the support. Like there was no room for failure with this plan, and it all fell apart. Like the first month that I came home, and I had to really figure out a plan for myself if I wanted to maintain any kind of recovery. So
yeah, it's not, I don't know, like recovery is so strange because I feel like you're in it for so long, and I feel like getting to the point where you can look back and be like, I did that is wild. Like looking back at not just like pictures of my body, because yes, like that changes obviously in recovery. You have to accept that, and that's that. But like I was talking to Anna maybe like last month or something, and we're on the phone, and she's like, "You're so calm." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, you just told me something that should make you very upset." And she's like, "You're just talking to me." And she's like, "I remember like we were talking about it, and I said like, yeah, I used to lash out at Anna so bad. Like I used to, and like she like it was this weird thing where I'd like lash out at her, and then like she'd be wearing a cardigan, and I'd like crawl into her sweater because I didn't want to like like I like it was so oh my gosh. It was just one of those things where I was like, yeah, like I am calm because I'm not in that mindset anymore where it's like like I might die right now. So like I'm panicking 24/7. So it was nice having that conversation with her, and hearing her just say you're calm was like probably the biggest thing I've heard in recovery for me. I was very like on edge. I was very like aggressive. I was very like angry at the world and bitter, and like if anyone did anything, I'd snap. I'd lose my shit, like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear her say, "You're so calm," was like, "Oh my God, you're kind of right." I'm like,
proud of myself.
yeah, it was like, "Oh my goodness, maybe you're right." Like, cause it was weird. Cause we used to get in fights. Like I remember just screaming at her, and she'd just be sitting there like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And like, it was just like, I could tell she was devastated. Like when I was younger and I just lash out at her and she was like, I don't know what to do. And she'd like beg for psychiatrists to help, and all the psychiatrists were like, put in a referral kind of thing.
Yeah, word.
Oh my God. Yeah. And like she didn't know what to do, and so to talk to her and have her say that to me, I was like, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that.
When you had mentioned about like bodies changing in recovery, I think for me, the first couple of years of recovery were really challenging because that the first year was challenging, but it wasn't challenging regarding my body. It was learning the tools, having to
challenging.
Yeah, it was like, oh, like, I can't be around certain people. I can't go back to my old job. Me and my body image, it wasn't that big of an issue. It was when I got pregnant, going into my second year of recovery. And then that's when like I really kind of recognized like, oh my gosh, like I'm struggling a little bit and I need a little bit extra support, because my body changing being pregnant was one thing, but then it was like postpartum. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is my body now. And that for me, then going into 3 years of recovery, I feel like, not that, I don't know if this is like victim mind, but I don't know. Like, I just feel like I didn't have like what is like a true recovery experience, right? Like, who knows? But I feel like for me, I wasn't able to really experience what recovery it was like, because I was so like having to adjust to like my pregnant body, then my postpartum body.
Yeah.
And now being 2 years in, having Bex, for the first time, like in a very long time, like I can look at myself in the mirror, like, and I'm like, I'm so proud of my body. Like, our bodies are so resilient. Like, I grew a baby, the baby is 2 now. And like, yeah, there's some things that I'm still like, not like loving, but I have a different appreciation for my body, I think. And that's what it is. Like, I just very much like am proud of myself and my body and my mind for being able to go through what we went through, and to really be able to come over, on the other side, to be able to talk about this. And like, don't get us wrong. Like, I'm sure like we could talk about our bad days still. Like, we have bad days still. We have days where we're like, is it worth it? Is like, is this all worth it? And we still experience, negative thought processes and patterns. But what I can say for myself is those thoughts still come, but I'm now able to identify it quicker and shut it down really quick. And I don't have to experience those loud, intrusive thoughts all day long. They still come up, but I'm able to like, okay, shut up, go away. And that's like, going into 4 years now of recovery, it's still challenging, but it's like, I wouldn't have the things that I have today if I was still living that type of lifestyle.
Yeah. I still like, like you said, like you still have those days where you're like, you want to throw in the towel. Like, it's like, is this even gonna work? Like, is this a forever thing? Like, that's for me. That's my thought. I'm like, am I going to be in recovery forever, or should I relapse now? Like, that's what I think. And I'm like, why would I think that? Like, that's a terrible thought to have. But like, recognizing it, like you said, and like being like, we're not going to do that, actually. It's kind of a big deal.
Like, we've put in the years to get to where we are. Let's keep going for another.
I did my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I don't want that. It's a lot of work to have an eating disorder.
Oh,
it's a lot of work.
It's exhausting.
It takes so much time, and like, people are like, how? Like, all you do is just not eat or overeat. And it's like, I don't think you understand. Like, eating in today's society, eating is like a large portion of what you're doing.
Oh my gosh.
And like, it's ridiculous. Like, food involves, it works around work, friends, family, traditions, holidays. Every single day you're supposed to eat like a lot. It's like, so every day you're faced with this like demon and you're like, oh, not again.
My favorite, like, before you wrap up, like, my favorite things that happened before I went to treatment, people would look at me and they would, like, when they started finding out that, you know, I was experiencing an eating disorder and that I was going away, there was comments that people would be like, they'd look me up and down and be like, but you look so good.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, do you even know what's going on in my head? Thank you. Yeah. And because at the time, I mean, there is no specific image on what an eating disorder looks like. First of all, there is no, you know, like, oh, you got to look like a certain way to have an eating disorder.
Well, it's a brain disorder, not a body disorder.
Exactly. And it was because I, you know, was training for that bodybuilding show that people just thought, like, you know, because of my appearance that I didn't have one because I don't know, had muscles or something. I don't even know what their logic was, but
because you were still upright. They're like, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. And it was just so, like, what's the word I want to say? Like, it was just
validating.
Yes, invalidating. Like, just because my bones aren't sticking out of my body does not, like, mean anything, because with what you say, like, it's a brain disorder, not a body disorder.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's true. Like, because it's literally in your head. And people are like, you don't look like you have it. And it's like, well, are you looking at my brain? Like, how can you tell? Like, do you x-ray vision? Like, thank you. Like, because people will still, they make comments all the time. People always think they have the right to make a comment about your body. And it's like, that's where I draw a big boundary with people, is if they even make one comment that I'm like, I don't like that, I will point it out. Like, I used to be so like, let people say whatever they want. It shouldn't affect me. Like, I should be strong enough to handle these comments. Now I'm like, I wish you didn't say that, you know, like, I am in recovery, like, that does not feel right, you know, don't say that.
I know.
And even if it's like a nice comment, even if people are like, oh, like,
imagine being in recovery and being 9 months pregnant and someone commenting on your body.
Oh, I'd lose.
Oh, he almost did not make it that day.
I'd lose it. Like, I'd lose it because people will be like, oh, you finally have boobs. That was a big thing people would tell me. Oh. And I'd literally want to swing on them. I was like, okay. Like, thank you for that. Thank you for noticing that. And it's always like someone creepy. They're like, oh, you finally have boobs, right? I'm like, anyways.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. Called eating again. Like, so like, I like to make them feel uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, I survived like a 10-year eating disorder. And then I was in treatment for like 5 years. And like, and then they're always like, oh,
wow, maybe I should
keep my big fat mouth shut. Like, yeah, maybe you should reconsider.
Yeah. It's, I faced a lot of that when I was like pregnant, and because of my hormones and just, you know, being in recovery.
I would just swing on people.
I just was like, how dare you comment on my body? And that's when I really started even advocating for myself on social media, where I was like, do not comment on anybody bodies, like, nobody.
Like, it shouldn't matter where you're at in recovery, but when people, like, even I notice medical professionals too.
Yes.
Like, my family doctor, he likes to be like, oh, you look like you're doing so well. And it's like, some days I'm not when I go see him, and I'm like, don't say that. Like, you can ask, like, if you ask a question and like, you're like, oh, how are you doing? Is a lot better than you look like you're doing, so whatever. Because you don't know just by looking at them. So it's like, mind your business.
I know. So I was going to ask if you can give any feedback or suggestions on what not to say to someone, whether they have an eating disorder or not. What would be some advice that you would give someone?
I actually think about this a lot, like when I have children, what I do with them and what I wouldn't do with them. I never comment on what someone's eating, even if they're like kind of, you know, when people kind of fish for it, they're like, oh, I'm not eating so much lately, blah, blah, blah. I don't comment. I don't say a single thing. I don't even respond.
Yeah.
Like, if someone's like, I've eaten so much today, I don't say anything. I just keep it quiet because I'm like, I don't know what's going on in their head. Like, I don't want to, because I don't know. You don't know what's going on in someone's head.
Right.
And so I make it a point. I never comment on what someone's eating, how much they're eating, if their diet has changed, if they're like a vegetarian one day and they're eating meat the next. I'm not like, oh, failure. Like I don't say anything because it's not my place, first of all. And second of all, I don't know what's going on with them.
Yep. I like that. So yeah, not commenting on what people eat, not commenting on people's bodies, please. Yeah. And I'm just trying to think of what else. Like, I really think the not commenting on people's bodies is just like, I can't stress enough. Yeah. It's just, there's so many other compliments that you can give someone.
Yeah.
I love your glasses. I'm really liking the color of your hair.
There's so many things.
Yeah, you're intelligent.
Yeah, like like that. I read something a little while ago. I forget what book it was in. It said something about like, if you can't find something physical that you want to say towards them, say something like about their like humor, about their whatever. You don't always, a compliment doesn't always have to be physical. Like, I remember we even had a treatment board, like the thing in treatment, a little billboard thing or whatever. And it was like words that you can use instead of like commenting on someone's physical appearance.
Yes, I remember that.
And I loved that because I was like, yeah, that's right. Like,
no, I remember that in treatment. It was like a big kind of board. And were we able to like write things on there too?
Yeah. It was a cute idea, actually.
If someone's listening today that has an eating disorder, what would you say to them?
Oh my gosh, I'd say advocate for yourself. That's the biggest one, is because like we said, like, you need support. This isn't one of those things that you can just kind of let go. Like, you need to advocate for yourself, unfortunately. And like, it's really like disappointing kind of to have to say that, but it's life or death for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, if you're not advocating for yourself, sometimes no one will. And like, it's so important to like say to your doctor or say to your nurse or say to someone like, I am suffering and I need help. Like, lay it down for them and be like, this is what I need. Like, research what's going on with yourself and like really like ask for the help you need and don't deny it like I did, because you'll be in treatment way longer. Like, be willing, not willful.
Yeah.
So Anna always told me, she's like, you're so willful. I was like, yeah, I am. But now I'm very willing and I'm very like open, and I'm very like, if someone has something to say about like my psychiatrist, she's like, I think we should do this, I'm very open about it. Like, I'm very like, okay, let's try it, let's work on this, instead of like shutting it down immediately. Like, be open towards treatment and be an advocate for yourself.
I like that. You took literally like the words right out of my mouth. I would have said definitely advocate for yourself, and you know yourself more than anybody. So you know what's going on inside of you. So definitely being that advocacy for yourself and telling the professionals, no, like, this is what's going on, because a lot of times professionals will think that they know what's best.
Yeah. And
to be honest, they don't always know what's best.
Yeah.
They don't. However, with what Hannah said, be willing, not willful.
Yeah.
So even though they might not always, know what's up, you still need to be willful. Willing.
Don't be willful.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I would even recommend is just really evaluate who you hang out with.
Yeah.
Like, and if there's young listeners listening, that is huge. Like, to be honest, I love being an adult because I can pick and choose my friends.
Yeah.
Oh, you suck my energy too much? Bye. You bring me down? Bye. When I was 15, 16, 17, those friends that you have, they're like your family, your life. You don't really want to that up because, that's your social.
That's kind of what you have.
Yes. And I do believe that even my choice of friend groups, there was lots of contributing factors on why this eating disorder even existed. But, I do believe that had I had a better friend group, that was like way more supportive,
And just
You know?
less toxic and like hated and love themselves a little more and hated themselves a little less, like maybe we wouldn't all be here.
Exactly.
Thanks so guys.
So I just want to say thank you so much, Hannah, for being here today. Like, you've warmed my heart once again. And this was a really important topic that I really wanted to bring to the table. And you were the first person that I really thought of, just because of how we really met. It's just such a wonderful story, you know, like maybe we didn't think of it back then, but, you know, fast forward almost 5 years later, it's so amazing to even see how far you've come. Like, you know, I met Hannah when she was at her sickest, and vice versa. She met me when I was at my absolute like sickest. And it's just really nice to see like where we are today.
I know.
And like, I am so proud of us.
It's crazy. Like we made it.
Yeah, we made it. Like we beat the odds. And honestly, if there's anyone out there listening that is in the depths of their eating disorder, you are literally listening to two girls who almost died from this battle.
Yeah.
And I have goosebumps right now. We overcame it. And to be honest, like, if we can do it, anybody can do it.
Like, I was told I would not make it. Like, the amount of times practitioners have looked at me and been like, yeah, you're gonna die. And now I'm here and I'm like, didn't die. Hello. Thank you.
Look at what
like, look at us now.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're gonna have to come back because we can talk about so many topics.
I feel like we have so many things to talk about.
I know. Well, that's our episode for today, and we really hope that you come back to listen to our next episode.